affairs of the command to his immediate subordinate to allow him to provide the management of the corps with an explanation of the role he played in the exercise. Dr. Audi emphasized that the NSCDC is a non-partisan, non-political organization that would not tolerate the involvement of personnel or any of its formation in political controversies. The declaration of Aisha Binani Dahiru of the All Progressive Congress as the winner of the governorship election in Adama by the resident electoral commissioner of the Independent National Commission when the results from the remaining LGAs had not been announced sparked widespread anger, which elicited the purported allegation against the corps.
The federal government has declared Friday 21st and Monday 24th of April 2023 as public holidays to mark this year's Eid al-Fitr celebration. The Minister of Interior, Rauf Aregbesola, made the declaration on behalf of the federal government in a statement issued by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry, Dr. Shuaib Belgore. He congratulated all Muslims for the successful completion of the holy month of Ramadan. The minister called on all Muslims to imbibe and practice the virtues of kindness, love, tolerance, peace, self-denial, sacrifice, and good neighborliness as exemplified by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He also assured of the government's commitment to the provisions of security for the life and property of every citizen and foreigner in the country. The minister used the opportunity to commend all security agencies for the successes recorded in the fight against criminals across the country. Aregbesola appealed to Nigerians to be part of the nation's security architecture by being vigilant and reporting suspicious individuals and activities to law enforcement agencies nearest to them, noting that security is everybody's responsibility.
Moving on, no fewer than 3,298 inmates across the custodial centers in Nigeria on death row, the Nigerian Correctional Service has revealed. Its public relations officer, Mr. Abubakar Umar, disclosed this, who pointed out that death sentences were not always carried out immediately after they are imposed. He said they constitute about 4.5% of the total number of inmates in our various custodial centers nationwide, and many of them committed capital offenses like culpable homicide, armed robbery, and terrorism, among others. The spokesman said that many had been executed in the past before the proliferation of the activities of human rights groups and organizations. He urged the state governors who shy away from signing the death warrants to commute them into other sanctions, as this will ensure that the toga of death is removed from them and also help the service to properly manage them.
All right, and with that, we've actually come to the end of the highlights at this hour. Let's take a look at more packages. The newly elected Adamawa State Governor, Amadou Fintiri, says the suspended Adamawa State INEC resident electoral commissioner, Hudu Yunus Ari, should be prosecuted in Adamawa State, where he committed the offense of illegally announcing a winner when he was not empowered to do so. Fintiri said this when he and his deputy received their certificates of return at the headquarters of the Independent National Electoral Commission in Abuja. Noel Sampson has more.
Amadou Fintiri maintained that the action of the suspended INEC reg was against the development of democracy and fundamental rights of the people of Adamawa State, and as such should be made to face justice there.
Hudu should be prosecuted, and I believe I'm the right person to prosecute him because he committed the offense in Adamawa, and I'm sure I'm going to prosecute him, along with the security chiefs that committed those offenses with him, because they ought to have been the one to protect democracy. But if the police and the security agencies will be the one to connive with INEC officials to scuttle our democracy, I think it's unfortunate.
He used the opportunity to thank the people of Adamawa State for voting him and promised not to disappoint them and the Independent National Electoral Commission for fighting for democracy.
Today, Nigerians have the cause to celebrate democracy, and all of us have won. I think going forward, we should learn from the lessons that we have gone through in the last 1 month, so that together as stakeholders, we will continue to build on the process, we will continue to build on our democracy to improve and deepen the democracy. One apology I have to make is what happened to the two excellent commissioners in my state. I take the blame and I make apology openly. I'm sorry for what the hoodlums and the miscreants did for the mistaken identity that they thought they were hoodoo.
The Adamawa State election was declared inconclusive before the rerun, which later produced Hamadu Fintiri as the winner. Noel Samson, Trust TV News, Abuja.
In recent months, some parts of the Federal Capital Territory have suffered from demolition exercises, with many rendered homeless and property worth millions lost. In this report, Noel Samson speaks with some affected Nigerians on life after demolition, especially in areas such as shelter, healthcare, and getting their lives back. The report.
Some of those affected by demolitions are yet to recover from the trauma of seeing their abodes reduced to rubble, while those who have gone beyond the trauma are struggling to get on their feet. With no prior notice of demolition in some areas, coupled with the lack of compensation from government, the resolve to begin all over again can be a daunting task. Ironically, some are already erecting fresh structures in the demolished areas, not minding the fact that the same fate can befall the new ones.
Honestly, the trauma remained till this second, this minute, from 21st day of December 2022. Shelter means a lot of things. How can you get the wood, even if it is used wood? How do you get the nails, even if it is used nails?
If you go in now, you can see so many places now, they have not repaired their bacha. They are just managing they are joining for one bacha, 3 family or 4 family inside. Because it's not raining, it's dry season, so sometimes in the night, they will sleep outside.
As I see us now, to pay school fees for my children, they're hard. To get food, they're hard. Both of the house were in demolished. Up to now, many of my people were in demolished their places now. They don't get anything where they feel repair another house.
This is one of the sites that have suffered demolition in Abuja in the past few months. The question now to be asked is that, how have they been coping and where have they been sleeping after the demolition? From Durumi in Abuja, Noel Samson, Trust TV News, Abuja.
As Muslims inch towards Salah festivities marking the end of Ramadan, local communities in Katsina State have been observing the 2023 fast amidst harsh weather and economic downturn. Most of residents of local communities such as Kaukai in Batagarawa local government area of the state observe the fast with little or nothing to start or break the fast at the end of the day. Abdullahi Yamadi visited some locals who shared their experience on how they struggle to observe the fast. His report.
Ramadan fast is a time to strengthen social and religious bonds between those who have and those who do not in Muslim communities. In a community like this, the spirit of sharing, togetherness and love that comes with Ramadan cannot be compromised. Once it is time for breaking the fast, everyone here brings out what is available to share with others, especially the needy among them. This is common even as only few out of the whole community can afford kunu and water to break the fast as a result of the harsh economic realities of the present-day Nigeria. The situation is unbearable, but for religious obligation like fasting, there is no compromise no matter the difficulties. This is the peak of dry season in Katsina State, and during this period, there is usually no food, no money, hence we only depend on God for all our needs.
I used to break my fast with something like kunu, kosai, and so on and so forth. Sometimes I used to engage in some different fruits, which include watermelon, orange, banana, but this is pertaining to me.
Zakat al-Fitr is given out to the needy in form of grains or food items from 3 days to Salah, preferably to Salah Eve, to enable the needy use the grains to prepare for Salah festivities. It is not only seen as a religious obligation, but also a transfer of love as well as building the spirit of togetherness and oneness among Muslims and non-Muslims alike. Islam has directed Muslims to help one another at all times, especially during Ramadan. This includes obligatory zakat al-fitr, which is compulsory on every Muslim to give out regardless of his age, gender, or status. Many believe that if the spirit of Ramadan is extended beyond the month, many poor families would have a better life, while peace and tranquility will prevail in the society. Abdullahi Ismayamadi, Trust Television News, Kazana.
And that's it on the news summary. On this, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll serve you the newspaper headline. Please stay with us.
Not necessarily tribal or regional. necessarily tribal or regional.
All right, thank you for staying with us on Daybreak this morning. It's now time for the newspaper review, and we'll be taking a few stories from the headlines on the national dailies this morning. We'll begin with Daily Trust newspaper, and we have the lead story here that talks about high fertilizer prices threaten wet season farming. Writers here says 50 kilogram costs 30,000 naira or more. High costs may cause food inflation. Federal government, states must act now, say stakeholders. You can find details of that story on page 4. And below that story is a pictorial of people gathering with the pictures of Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli custody during a rally in solidarity with them in the city of Nablus in the occupied West Bank in Nablus, Palestinian territories yesterday. We also have more stories at the top of the page. 40 days to go. Buhari's government approves 1.535 trillion naira for 11 road projects. Banditry, 308 killed, 746 kidnapped in Kaduna in 3 months, says reports. We have more stories here. Tinubu asks police to probe Adamawa election controversy. We have more stories here. Death toll hits 151 as Lassa fever spreads to 26 states. 3,298 inmates on death row, says Correctional Service. On page 5, Buhari returns from Saudi Arabia as Sudan crisis forces flight rerouting. And these are some of the stories on Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
And we move on now to the Nigerian News Direct, and it has there as the major story, controversial Adamawa poll. Tinubu demands investigation. Our intervention is needless, federal government insists 2023 general election best ever, says election matters INEC's duty to handle. That's on page 21. And to other stories, Lagos state government ready to partner with investors, discourse for sustainable power. That's coming from Sanwo-Olu. And Opportunity Fair, the National Content Development and Management Board to boost local content investments and capacity building. And right there above the name marks, Seplat Energy drives capacity building through teachers' empowerment. Unlimited joy for Glow dealers as telco splashes houses, cars. Another gift, you'll find that actually corroborated by the front page picture. And finally, we have Dangote Cement Ibeshi empowers farmers to boost food production. These are the major stories on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct.
All right, let's take a look at Blueprint newspaper. From the top of the page, the e-customs project. Despite court order, FEC OK's fresh memo. We also have riders that says El-Rufai to federal government and May 29. Intensify security operations for peaceful transition. And riders here says once criminal outlaws can exploit 39 days gap. 1,266 residents killed, 4,973 kidnapped in 15 months in Kaduna, 16 killed in Zamfara, 8 rescued in Benue. Lagos prays for Tinubu's smooth handover. Details can be found on page 6 of Blueprint newspaper. We also have more stories. Eid al-Fitr. Federal government declares Friday and Monday public holidays. Ex-Blueprint defense correspondent Ndache authors 3 books on counterinsurgency. We also have Nigeria's currency in circulation hits 1.6 trillion naira in March. And on the footnotes there, we have convene NEC meeting in 7 days of his court action. Lukman tells Adamu, and that is on APC. We also have more NNPCL. Buhari canvasses due process on Ararume, federal government mulls appeal. RMRDC, reducing importation of web offset link. And Adamawa, Tinubu 6 police wreck probe congratulates Fintiri others. And these are some of the stories on Blueprint newspaper.
And to the Punch newspaper, We'll take stories that have not been highlighted by other papers. Insecurity, local rice price jumps by 200%. Rice price soars from 173 per kg to 521 per kg under Buhari despite government intervention. And this is coming from an MBS, or the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics report. Rice farmers, producers, experts blame rising inflation, insecurity, and others for rice woes. You'll find two other stories. Lagos mobs bonds BRT bus as driver dies it crash. You see the BRT bus right there, I think, on a bridge, if you like. If you want the details of what led to that bond, please pick up today's Punch. And two other stories. El-Rufai raises the alarm over insecurity ahead of May 29th. Ogun father chains stabs 2 children to death. What a carnage. And substandard materials quacks caused Banana Island building collapse, according to report. And the Federal Account Allocation Committee allocation committee drops as FG states share 715 billion. And Buhari returns, avoids Sudan airspace. These are the major stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper.
Okay, let's see what the Nation is saying this morning. The lead story here says why Buhari didn't intervene in Adamawa poll crisis by government. Tinubu 6 probe of debacle. NSCDC commandant summoned. We also have Kaduna. We already took that story. We also have 172 Nigerians troop Guinea-Bissau. At the top of the page there, Iwanyao is Ohanese president. And we also have acting LP chair, reject suspension by party NEC. And Buhari to appeal judgment voiding Ararome's removal. GMO here says Nigeria not defaulting in China debt repayments. And these are some of the stories on the Nation.
And moving on to the niche newspaper now, the Business Day this morning. Very interesting dimension to the front page this morning. Jollof, in other words, jollof rice costs soar to 7-year high under Buhari. Interesting perspective to that story. Nigeria didn't default in Chinese debt repayment, and this is coming from the Debt Management Office. Malaria overdiagnosis leaves deadlier diseases unchecked. And importers count losses as vendors strive at Tinkham ports. This has become a recurring decimal in port stories. These are the major stories on the front page of the Business Day.
All right, let's take a look at some of these particular stories. And right here, we also have our guest on, in the studio with us here. He's Nasser Lowell. He's a constant, and he's actually joining us here to analyze some of these stories this morning. Good morning, Mr.
Good
Nasser.
morning.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
Hussein is struggling to give you maybe a fresh title, but Nasser is still the editor-in-chief, Deadline newspaper. It's a pleasure to have you join us as always.
Thank you very much.
Interesting dimension to front pages this morning. The Daily Trust is reporting the high cost of fertilizer and how that can feed, going to affect wet season farming and could worsen food inflation, which is one thing we have suffered over the last 2 years. And the MBS, incidentally, is also coming out with statistics that is now showing us how it has become very expensive to prepare a pot of jollof rice, if you like, something that is a constant in almost every home. What sense do you make of this report?
Well, to start with, it's quite unfortunate that we are still talking about only wet season farming in Nigeria. Most of our farmers cannot engage in dry season farming, and for no fault of theirs, because the government has not been able to make all the necessary, make provision, for it to happen. And if you look at the number of companies in Nigeria that are actually into production of fertilizer, we have quite a number, but still we're not talking about our capacity to even meet the demands. We are talking about the inability of our farmers to be able to even purchase this fertilizer from the companies. And this is a government that is already talking about, some subsidy, in the procurement of fertilizer. But somehow, all the money, all the intervention of the government is actually going to the middlemen, people that have no business, with farming activities in any way, because maybe they see it as an opportunity to pay back some of their supporters, those who supported them during their campaign and what have you. So instead of helping the farmers directly, they end up sending all this intervention to people that have no business, with farming activities as far as we are concerned. So we should worry for the fact that we are talking about food. It's something that people can actually not do without. If you are talking about some luxurious, some luxury, you can say people can forgo one or two, but you are talking about food, and people have to survive. So we really have to find a way of, going around all these bottlenecks. And for the government, they should also try and see to it that farmers engage in farming not only during the wet season farming, because that's like relying on nature only. When you can, create dams, you can do so many things with that's with irrigation, which at the moment, very few states actually have the capacity to do that.
When you actually talked about, interventions and the bottlenecks, I seem to remember a time where there were lots of interventions for farmers, and not just even the high cost right now. We're seeing lots of terrorism in some of these farming communities. We're seeing, flooding that just, finished, and then it's actually looming, another, flooding season is actually looming again. So I don't know, how can these farmers, and a lot of farmers have actually given up, whether they like it or not. Talking about inflation, there's hunger everywhere, prices of food has actually gone up. So how can we, we talked about how to cushion the effect already, but how can we let these farmers know that, know not to give up on farming? Because if you've tried and tried and tried, of course,
well,
at
honestly,
some point.
It's very difficult to sometimes to hold on, nobody wants to spend 100 naira, and then in the end, what you will be able to get is maybe 70 naira. That's like losing, 30 naira of your own hard-earned money. So honestly, unless the government, does its own part of the bargain, I don't see how farmers will be able to weather the storm, so to say, because they are not in it for charity. They want to make money, in as much as they also want to have something to spend on their own. But then, like I said, it's the government's responsibility to do that. Like you said, right now, so many farmers cannot even go to the farms because of insecurity. You go to the farm today, and before you know it,
you've been kidnapped or something.
Yeah, you are abducted, and then instead of your inputs becoming the issue, at transaction being transacted upon, you are now the one, that some criminals will be putting some money, saying that they have to pay this before they will let you out and things like that. So the farmers have been trying on their own. It's now left to the government actually, to make sure that people can actually engage in farming, and then they also have access to all the inputs that they require. Because, like I said earlier, they are not in it just to make sure people eat. They also want to make money. If it is for them to maybe engage in charity, probably they will do other things other than farming.
Absolutely. You've talked about providing security for farmers, and some of the papers also capture this. Kaduna has come into focus again. The Daily Trust, for instance, is reporting that over 308 have been killed in the last 3 months, and over 700 kidnapped in Kaduna. And in another paper, I think we saw the governor raising alarm ahead of the inauguration that insecurity is becoming a concern again. Why is it difficult for us to, this is coming despite what appears like a sustained engagement by the Nigerian military forces. What else do we need to do? Have we come to the point where we would require some kind of external support? Does it appear that we are pretending to be the big brothers who can take care of their problem and we are suffocating in it? Or is it, I mean, we provided assistance everywhere we were asked to, even in the face of our own internal crisis. Why is it difficult for us to ask for some kind of help to nip this in the bud?
Well, I think for the sake of context, the governor actually spoke, during the presentation of the 2022 report by the State's Ministry of Internal Affairs and Internal Security and Home Affairs, I think.
Headed by Aaron, yeah.
Yes, which is headed by Samuel Aaron. So that was where he made the comment. But security issue is not something that we should be paying attention to just because we are, approaching a transition period. Security is something that we should engage in. Our security forces should remain alert. 247, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. 300. And so it's something that we just have to do it continuously. It's not something that we should relax. And then maybe because we are approaching a transition period, we should now maybe decide to up the ante. I think the government, should make sure all those who may want to cause trouble, not just during the transition, even today, even tomorrow, they are not given the opportunity to do that. Sometimes, they may succeed in one or two ways, but the way the government will now respond will now show us that, yes, the government has always been, at alert and alive to its responsibility. But to say, to raise alarm, simply because we are heading towards a transition period, honestly, I don't think it will help the system in the long run. Because like I said, security is something that we just have to, do continuously without having a day off.
All right, so let's quickly take a look at City and Crime page, pages 16 and 17 on Daily Trust newspaper. Really interesting stories here. We have attention as gunmen kidnap driver at Nasarawa Deputy Governor's office. We have 2 killed, 5 injured as car crashes pedestrian somersault in Anambra. We have 2 killed, 4 injured as perimeter fence collapses in Abuja. This happened yesterday in Wuse. A man arrested for attempting to kidnap girl in Kano. We have kidnappers informant commit suicide in Abuja suburb. We also have 2 arrested for beating colleague to death over hemp in Kwara State. Kano man remanded for stealing bread. We have 2 remanded for stealing pots in Kwara. And female circumcision attracts 4-year jail term. And the final one here, father tortures 2 children to death in Ogun State. He actually chained and locked them for 3 months without food.
Well, quite interesting stories there, but unfortunately, if the newspapers should pay attention to only, stories that have to do with crime, we may end up with no space for business, no space for comments, for agriculture. So it's like a wake-up call to all the security agencies, the fact that things like this continue to happen. We're not saying that they are not doing anything. Probably that's why we even have less, maybe the numbers will have been much higher. But, this is something that, we see the results, not just the effort. It's good that you are making the effort, but it's only the results that we get to see at the end of the day. If, despite your presence on the streets, we continue to have, criminals, having a field day in so many places, then nobody will give you any, maybe kudos, for the job that you are doing. But if you are able to, make it very difficult for all these things to happen, then of course Nigerians, being who they are, Nigerians, we have to give it to them. Once they see efforts, they appreciate. But when you do nothing, then you don't expect them to be clapping for you when there is no basis for doing that.
Yeah. Interesting development also yesterday. We saw Governor Fintri picks up his certificate of return. Personally, when I was looking at him, I was wondering why he spotted black like Hussein. Like it felt more like a mourning. Then in the celebration, he was moody. And at that event, he also called that they allow him probe the incidents. Well, he felt like wanting to take his own pound of flesh. But what was instructive from everything that happened yesterday was, on the one hand, Tinubu was asking the police to probe what had happened in Adamawa. On the other, the government is saying they had no business with what happened in Adamawa, that elections and whatever happens with it is supposed to be fixed by INEC. But INEC is not law enforcement agency. We saw government agency, people who superintend the local unit of the law enforcement agency take active participation in what was a bizarre outcome. And isn't it surprising that the federal government is pretending not to have a responsibility to, because those could have led to a complete breakdown of law and order?
Well, maybe because some people actually accused the government of being behind, what actually transpired. So maybe they think it's better they allow all that's relevant,
agency,
to be able to do that. And you can see even I think the NSCDC, the CG, summoned the state commandant, in Adamawa. And it's over the same issue. And you also had Finteri, talking about the fact that the police and a number of security agencies actually played a role, in what transpired. And for us to allow him to take care of it, like you said, he may also want to abuse the process, because this is something that has to do with you directly.
That's right.
And if you take charge of the prosecution, maybe you may go beyond what you are supposed to do. So I think the government, should be interested in what happens after this. Like the president-elect said, this is something that we should not only investigate, but all those who are found wanting, in one way or the other, they should be prosecuted, because this is something that we are talking about, our democracy. If this goes without, any sanction, then be sure that next election, so many people may try this, or even much more than this. So already I saw some people already saying Finteri is a veteran, when it comes to inconclusive election, because this is not the first time he's facing inconclusive election. And then they said he's also not a stranger, to all these schemings and what have you, that he did probably the same thing during the time of Governor Inyako and what have you. But we're talking about a system in Nigeria. Simply because someone was found wanting in the past does not mean we should not try to correct all the faults, so that we don't get to see a recurrence in the future.
Okay, now let's talk about, a story on Daily Trust and also on Guardian. On Guardian, it actually says 40 days to go, FEC approves over 100 billion naira contracts. But on Daily Trust, it says Buhari's government approves 1.535 trillion naira for 11 road projects. Just 40 days to go.
Well, they will say that the government is a continuum. They have like a 4-year mandate, and that mandate will end on the 29th of May. So maybe using that argument, they will say that they still have a responsibility to the state, and that's what they are doing. But we are talking about contracts.
Continuity again.
And we are talking about contracts. So many people will now say maybe it's an opportunity to
your cronies,
get some people rich before the end of the tenure. Maybe those who you were not able to help, in the course of the 4-year term. Now you are trying to find a way of repaying them. But sometimes, just because people will talk should not stop government from playing its role. But the government should also worry about, some of the things that, the meanings that people can read into some of its actions. Because if you are talking about 1.5 trillion, then that means around 100 plus, per because we are talking about 11 roads, and 11 roads gulping that amount of money. I know some will say maybe there are bridges to be constructed, there are maybe right-of-ways, relocations, compensations, and what have you. But sometimes it's always better, to avoid all this unnecessary controversy, so that right or wrongly, maybe people don't get to accuse you, of things that maybe you don't even
Interesting. I recall a conversation with Nasir El-Rufai, where questions were being asked about the 72 hours contract he signed off as Minister of FCT. He said, well, I was still Minister of FCT, and I had the power to do whatever at that time. And they said the one you gave to your wife, and his response was, she was a citizen of Nigeria, qualified by every right to have asked if she qualifies, and I'm supposed to sign off. Well, so be it. We have this other very troubling story from deaths arising from Lassa fever, 151 so far, and spreading to about 26 states. Each time you hear of things like this, you think that in 2023, I mean, we shouldn't be losing so much human life to this kind of incidents. Is it a function of awareness, or people are just stuck in their old ways of doing things?
I think it has to do with awareness, because we are talking about simple hygiene. Because how do you get Lassa fever is by maybe coming into contact, with the feces of rats and some rodents. So if you take your hygiene seriously, you may be able to avoid things like this. But because there is no enough awareness, people don't even know. You can see most of the victims of Lassa fever actually are those who are treating, patients. Sometimes the medical personalities are the ones that are affected, because when people come to the hospital, they will not tell you that this is what has happened.
That's if they even know themselves.
Yeah, so before you know it, you have like interface with it, and then you end up, and it's something that is very difficult to actually treat. So because of that, we are like endangering the lives of our health, medical officers when we need their services very much. So if we can increase the awareness, probably we will be able to, even if we don't eradicate it completely, at least we will be able to reduce the number of fatalities that we see every day.
Well, just before you go, let's have your thoughts on the Correctional Service saying 3,298 inmates are on death row at the moment.
Well, because our state governors, they hold the ace when it comes to execution, signing of the execution of all these condemned criminals, as they call them. But for political reasons, for other reasons that they are not actually telling us, people are still there. And sometimes, personally, I don't know what others may think, but if you deprive people of their lives, honestly, I don't think you should be allowed to retain yours. So if you have gone through the process, and then we are sure, that you have been convicted beyond reasonable doubts, nothing should stop us from, sending you to the afterlife.
This is the reason why a lot of people seem to think repentant Boko Haram, former Boko Haram members should not be allowed to, go back into the society, and to be made to face, what they did while they were still part of the Boko
I also
Haram.
believe that, because, especially even if we are to do that, we shouldn't be doing it, now that the war is still on. We can still see those that are responsible for the killing of, our loved ones and what have you. How will you feel, somebody that you are accusing of maybe killing your loved one, walking about freely?
The risks of playing the devil's advocate, Husseina. Some others say the governors don't want to sign off on it so that they don't create a precedence for themselves, it appears. Well, that would be a case for another day. We have to prove that they are equally as guilty, so that somebody doesn't say, well, you signed off on the deaths of some criminals, now you're here, let us hasten your transition to the afterlife. It's been a wonderful conversation. with Malen Nasser. Hussein, I was tempted to make him a third presenter.
Oh my goodness!
Well,
it's not such a bad idea.
Yes, it's not. It's not. It's not. Or the number of times we have had to hijack him to play that role. Anyways, we want to thank you very much for always showing up whenever we come calling and for providing those insightful perspectives to some of the issues that made the front pages. As somebody who makes front pages himself, thank you once again.
Thank you for having me.
By the time we see you next, the Ramadan would have been over, and maybe you would have added a bit of flesh from that time. And so ahead of that time, we want to say Barakah de Salah in advance.
Thank you very much.
That's much we can bring you from the newspaper pages this morning. We'll take a quick breather. We'll see you at the top of the hour. Please stay with us.
That's great.
Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Good morning and thank you for joining us and also staying with us on Daybreak this morning. We're live on Trust TV in the Federal Capital Territory. I'm Dashan Husseina Usman and thank you so much for staying with us.
It's a pleasure to always have you join us. I am Sunday Michael Ogo.
All right, it's at the top of the hour, so let's take a look at the highlights at this hour. Federal government declares public holidays for Eid al-Fitr celebration.
And Buhari returns from 8th-day visit to Saudi Arabia.
NSCDC CG summons Adama commandant over election controversy.
And now the details. The federal government has declared Friday 21st and Monday 24th of April 2023 as public holidays to mark this year's Eid Fitr celebration. The Minister of Interior, Rauf Aregbesola, made the declaration on behalf of the federal government in a statement issued by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry, Dr. Shuaib Belgouri. He congratulated all Muslims for the successful completion of the holy month of Ramadan. The minister called on all Muslims to imbibe and practice the virtues of kindness, love, tolerance, peace, self-denial, sacrifice, and good neighborliness as exemplified by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He also assured of the government commitment to the provision of security for the life and property of every citizen and foreigner in the country. The minister used the opportunity to commend all security agencies for the success recorded in the fight against criminals across the country. Aregbesola appealed to Nigerians to be part of the nation's security architecture by being vigilant and reporting suspicious individuals and activities to law enforcement agencies nearest to them, noting that security is everybody's responsibility.
President Muhammadu Buhari on Wednesday arrived Abuja. Okay, I'll take that again. President Muhammadu Buhari on Wednesday arrived Abuja after his 8th-day official visit to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where he also performed the Umrah, which is the Lesser Hajj. His spokesman, Malam Garba Shehu, in a statement said the presidential aircraft landed at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, after nearly 7 hours for a 4 to 5 hour Jeddah-Abuja flight due to the ongoing situation in Sudan that warrants the avoidance of the country's entire airspace by air traffic. He said the rerouted aircraft flew from Jeddah in Saudi Arabia through Eritrea, Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, DRC, Central African Republic, Cameroon, and eventually Nigeria. The presidential spokesman said upon his safe arrival in Abuja, the president was received at the airport by the Chief of Staff, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, Deputy Inspector General of Police, Malam Muhammad, representing the Inspector General of Police and the Director General, Department of State Services, Yusuf Magaji Bichi.
And moving on, the Commandant General of the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, Ahmed Abubakar Audi, has summoned the Adamawa State Commandant of the Corps, Mohammed Bello, to the Corps National Headquarters to explain the role he played in the just concluded elections in the state. A statement by the Corps spokesman, Commandant Olushola Odumosu, said this is in connection to the controversy surrounding the just concluded Adamawa State governorship supplementary elections, where the Corps was alleged of complicity along the other security agencies. The Corps herdsman directed the state commandant to immediately hand over affairs to the command to his immediate subordinate to allow him time to provide the management of the Corps with an explanation of the role he played in the exercise. Dr. Audi emphasized that NSCDC is a non-partisan, non-political organization that will not tolerate the involvement of personnel or any of its formation in political controversies. The declaration of Aisha Binani Dahiru of the All Progressive Congress as the winner of the last governorship election in Adamawa by the resident electoral commissioner of the Independent National Electoral Commission when the results from the remaining local government areas had not been announced sparked widespread anger, which elicited the purported allegation against the Corps.
All right, with that, we've wrapped up highlights at this particular hour. Let's take a look at more stories coming up. The House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee investigating the sale of 48 million barrels of crude oil amounting to over $2.4 billion and crude oil export to global destinations from 2014 to date has demanded the appearance of the Attorney General of Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, to give evidence on allegations that he proved the payment of the sum of $200 million to two private firms as consultancy services on whistleblowers' recoveries. Now, the ad hoc committee is also demanding the appearance of Minister of Finance Zainab Ahmed to explain her role in the said approvals and payments without providing details of actual recoveries for whistleblowers. The report.
Chairman of the ad hoc committee, Mark Gbila, gave the ruling on Wednesday at the resumed hearing of the investigation, saying that both ministers have been uncooperative with the panel despite several letters of invitation. He said they have not been getting any form of cooperation from the Ministry of Finance and Attorney General's office regarding the investigation, despite series of correspondence sent to them on the matters they are investigating. He added that they have seen documents from the Accountant General's office where the Minister of Finance approved the payment of substantial amounts of money to so-called whistleblowers, where details of monies recovered were not provided. Wheeler also added that they have heard media reports by the federal government indicating that millions of dollars were recovered through whistleblower revelations on behalf of the country. But as a parliament, they have not seen where those monies were routed through as required by the Constitution before they were expended.
Of the committee, we have not been getting the cooperation from the Ministry of Finance and the Attorney General's office with regards to salient issues that this committee is investigating. We have seen documentation from the Accountant General's office that shows that the Honorable Minister of Finance approved the payment of significant, substantial amounts of money to so-called whistleblowers, where details of the monies recovered was not provided. We have had media reports by the federal government indicating that millions of dollars were recovered.
Earlier, during questioning, the Chief Executive of Nigeria Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, Gbenga Komolafe, denied knowledge of the alleged sales of 40 million barrels of crude oil export in 2015.
Relating to the specific issue of the 48 million barrels of crude oil stolen, that is a committee was set up, to the best of my knowledge, but I wasn't a member of that committee. That is my response, Mr. Chairman.
The resolve to summon the two ministers, according to the committee, follows their repeated failure to honor earlier invitations from the House.
The newly elected Adamawa State Governor, Ahmed Fintiri, says the suspended Adamawa State INEC resident electoral commissioner Hudu Yunusa Ari should be prosecuted in Adamawa State, where he committed the offense of illegality announcing a winner when he was not empowered to do so. Fintiri said this when he and his deputy received their certificate of return at the headquarters of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Mel Sampson brings us more.
Hamadu Fintiri maintained that the action of the suspended INEC reg was against the development of democracy and fundamental rights of the people of Adamawa State, and as such should be made to face justice there.
Hudu should be prosecuted, and I believe I'm the right person to prosecute him because he committed the offense in Adamawa, and I'm sure I'm going to prosecute him, along with the security chiefs that committed those offenses with him, because they ought to have been the one to protect democracy. But if the police and the security agencies will be the one to connive with INEC officials to scuttle our democracy, I think it's unfortunate.
He used the opportunity to thank the people of Adamawa State for voting him and promised not to disappoint them, and the Independent National Electoral Commission for fighting for democracy.
Today, Nigerians have the cause to celebrate democracy, and all of us have won. I think going forward, we should learn from the lessons that we have gone through in the last 1 month, so that together as stakeholders, we will continue to build on the process, we will continue to build on our democracy to improve and deepen the democracy. One apology I have to make is what happened to the two excellent commissioners in my state. I take the blame and I make apology openly. I'm sorry for what the hoodlums and the miscreants did for the mistaken identity that they thought they were Hudu.
The Adamawa State election was declared inconclusive before the rerun, which later produced Hamadu Fintiri as the winner. Noel Samson, Trust TV News, Abuja.
No fewer than 214 people have been killed and 746 kidnapped in Kaduna State in the first quarter of 2023. Now, the Commissioner, Ministry of Internal and Security Affairs, Samuel Aruwan, who stated this while presenting the first quarter security report in Kaduna State, said 94 bandits were also neutralized within the period under review. The report.
Presenting the report, Aruwan said Kaduna Central topped with 115 victims killed and 137 kidnapped, while Southern Kaduna and Northern Kaduna came second and third, respectively.
Kaduna Central account for 492. Southern Kaduna Senatorial District account for 221. Northern Senatorial District account for 17.
Some heads of security agencies who spoke said the engagement has been deepened towards mitigating terrorist threat and fostering intelligence gathering to tackle the menace of banditry and terrorism in the state.
Challenge in Southern Kaduna, indeed in other areas too, we need quite some push on the non-kinetic line so that people can learn to live together in peace.
A comprehensive operation order has already been prepared, and all my area commanders and DPOs, I met with them on Monday, and I have given them the roles that each and every one of them is supposed to play.
Kaduna State Governor Nasiru El-Rufai in his address said the state government will continue to sustain the current offensive against bandit and terrorist hideouts and appeal to security operatives to continue to partner with the state government to enable it achieve set objectives.
We note with concern the continued failure of traditional and community leaders, particularly in Zangon Kataf Chiefdom, to prevent resort to self-help by recalcitrant youths, and assure you all that we will take some actions to send a clear message in this regard. We note with gratitude that the military initiated offensive security operations against the bandits in the last half of 2022. As observed earlier, this helped to improve the security situation in many of our communities, but these operations must obviously be widened and sustained as the most effective way to protect our people and uphold law and order.
He also called on the citizens of the state to continue to provide useful and reliable information to security operatives for the safety of their communities and the entire state. Bello Musa, Trust TV News, Kaduna.
All right, moving on, as Muslim itches towards Salah festivities marking the end of Ramadan, local communities in Katsina State have been observing the 2023 fast amidst harsh weather and economic downturn. Most of the residents of the local government, such as Kaukai in Batagarawa local government area of the state, observe the fast with little or nothing to start or break the fast at the end of the day. Abdullahi Yamadi visited some locals who shared their experience on how they struggle to observe the fast.
Ramadan fast is a time to strengthen social and religious bonds between those who have and those who do not in Muslim communities. In a community like this, the spirit of sharing, togetherness, and love that comes with Ramadan cannot be compromised. Once it is time for breaking the fast, everyone here brings out what is available to share with others, especially the needy among them. This is common even as only few out of the whole community can afford kunu and water to break the fast as a result of the harsh economic realities of the present-day Nigeria. The situation is unbearable, but for religious obligation like fasting, there is no compromise no matter the difficulties. This is the peak of dry season in Katsina State, and during this period, there is usually no food, no money, hence we only depend on God for all our needs.
I used to break my fast with something like kunu, kosai, and so on and so forth. Sometimes I used to engage in some different fruits, which include watermelon, orange, banana, but this is pertaining to me.
Zakat al-Fitr is given out to the needy in form of grains or food items from 3 days to Salah, preferably to Salah Eve, to enable the needy use the grains to prepare for Salah festivities. It is not only seen as a religious obligation, but also a transfer of love as well as building the spirit of togetherness and oneness among Muslims and non-Muslims alike. Islam has directed Muslims to help one another at all times, especially during Ramadan. This includes obligatory Zakat al-Fitr, which is compulsory on every Muslim to give out regardless of his age, gender, or status. Many believe that if the spirit of Ramadan is extended beyond the month, many poor families would have a better life, while peace and tranquility will prevail in the society. Abdullahi Ismayamadi, Trust Television News, Katsina.
All right, with this, we'll take a quick breather, and when we return, the show continues. welcome back. Now, as the holy month of Ramadan is coming to an end and Salah celebrations is drawing nearer, this morning we'll be discussing the lessons of this great month after the reflective exercise prescribed to become mindful of Allah and the people to adhere to this practice to feel closer to the Almighty Allah. Now, today in the studio, we have the Imam of Abuja National Mosque, Dr. Muhammad Kabir, with us to actually, share with us the lessons learned from the Ramadan. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on Daybreak.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right, so Imam, now just as the question is, what are the blessings and the lessons to be learned from the Ramadan?
Thank you very much. Ramadan fast is a period earmarked by Islam for every Muslim to fast for the period of 1 month. First of all, the fasting originated after the revelation of the Holy Quran to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. The revelation took place in the month of Ramadan, so some scholars of the view that the Ramadan fast is for people to show their gratitude and gratefulness to the Almighty for revealing the Quran in this period. So lesson number 1 is to show gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for sparing our life throughout the year. So today we are now fasting, at least to show our gratitude to Him. That is 1. 2, God in His infinite mercy commanded us to fast because it has been commanded nations before us to fast. Let me say it is coincide. Jewish finished their own Passover early this week. Christians finishes their Lent last week when they had Easter. Muslims are ending their fasting this week. So you can see it coincide. We were told that all the people that came before Muhammad, they were asked to fast. That is why in Christianity they have Lent. In Jewish they have Passover. So fasting is there. As long as the religion is originated from heaven, from God, definitely in that religion there must be fasting. So this is 1. Fasting remains an avenue that unites the entire humanity. You can see every Muslim across the globe must to fast. Whether you are man or woman, young or aged, you will fast. So fasting is an avenue of uniting the entire humanity, as I mentioned. So this is also one of the benefit of fasting to the entire humanity. Another point, when in the society, people are not the same. Some are poor, some are rich. So the rich people doesn't know, or they have no experience of hunger or whatever, because they have money to buy all what they need. But the poor person experience hunger sometimes because he don't even have money to buy. So God in His mercy make it obligatory upon everybody to fast. Whether you are rich, you are poor, you are a leader, you are president, you are governor, you are traditional ruler, whatever position you held in the society, when it comes to fasting, you have to fast so that you too will experience the agony of thirst, hunger, so that you will now have, or you now change your thinking over poor people, so that you always, at least once in a year, experience what they are having. in their own life. So that will give you chance to understand their situation and come to their aid. So this is something very, very important to the life of Muslims as well as everybody across the globe. So Ramadan fast also go and bring, let me say, Ramadan fast bring people to be closer to each other. When it is in the evening, when we are going to break the fast, you see many people coming to a particular place, for example, mosque, to break their fast. Let me cite an example of the National Mosque here in Abuja. You see more than 1,000 people came to break their fast there because they know with or without money, at least you can have free food to break your fast. So Alhamdulillah, this is very important. So it is very, very significant to Muslims that we fast throughout the month of Ramadan.
Okay. You have made some quite an instructive revelation about what needs to be done, how this came about and all. But there is always the question about the virtues that are prescribed during this Ramadan. You've talked about sharing, good neighborliness, and feeling pains and all of that. Should these be virtues that are only confined to the Ramadan period? Should we not be seeing these kind of virtues in our everyday life, especially for Nigeria, given how we seem to have been divided along ethnic lines over the years?
So that is why at least in every year we'll now experience the Ramadan fast, so that we'll now know, yes, in life sometimes somebody has to make sacrifices for the interest of all, for peace to reign, for peaceful coexistence. You have to make some sacrifices. For example, look at the period of Ramadan. Somebody who has all what it takes, he has the money, he has everything, but he has to abstain from eating, drinking, or sexual intercourse from the dawn to the sunset. So he was able to do that as a sacrifice between him and his creator. So if you learn to do that, then you are expected to do the same in or outside Ramadan. So even after Ramadan, we are expected to continue with Ramadan's virtues, so that the whole society will be good for everybody. The atmosphere will be very, very nice for everybody, because we are all brothers, or I can say we are all keepers of our brothers. So we will now respect our neighbors, because your neighbor can be everybody. You see, Islam is not about tribalism or sectionalism or whatever. No, as far as Islam is concerned, every human beings are one and from the same source. So God says, Ya ayyuhan nas, O you mankind, inna khalaqanakum min dhakarin wa untha. We created you from a single male and female. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلًا. And we made you into different nations and tribes. لِتَعَارَفُوا. So for you to understand yourselves. So for example, if you say, okay, I am a Biram by tribe, then you can identify me as that. While you are Fulani, so you can be identified as Fulani. While this man is an Igbo man, he can be identified as an Igbo man. So being whatever tribe you are, make no any significant but just for you to be identified. That is how Islam look at things. So in the sight of Allah, are you good? Yes, so you are good. So that's why Allah says, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The best of you beside Allah is the pious. Somebody who is good. Somebody who make anything to help his fellow human beings. So all this virtue must to continue even after Ramadan. In fact, that is the lessons of Ramadan.
All right, now, Imam, what does Islam actually say about those who even eat more during iftar?
Iftar is not about too much eating. Iftar is about you eating something so that you keep the life going. But if after reaching that time of breaking the fast, you eat so much, then you defeat the aims and objectives of Ramadan fast is defeated.
So it's not a make-up food for what you have sacrificed.
No. Because eating too much food is problem. According to the medical personnel, they said eating too much food will harm your health. While our Prophet ﷺ said, Sumu tasihu, you fast and you will be healthy. So if fasting is for health, for you being healthy, then there is no need for you to eat too much, because eating too much food, you won't be healthy. So Ramadan is not for hunger, and it is not for eating too much food. It is a sacrifice you make to show your gratefulness to your Creator, who give you all the life you are enjoying.
So there are also debates about what happens to people who miss some days of Ramadan and they have to pass on within that period. What obligations lie for their family under that circumstance?
There are so many categories of people who will miss Ramadan fast. Let me start with those who departed. When somebody dies in the period of Ramadan, he is doing his fasting and suddenly he dies due to some things that is only God knows. That man dies, so his chapter is closed. Whoever dies, his chapter is closed. So nobody will pay anything on his behalf. He has done his own time, that's the end of it. There are others who miss Ramadan fast due to some reasons or excuses. For example, somebody wake up, he felt sick, and that sickness prevented him from continue with his fast. So, which means he lost that day. So he will now count the number of days he was unable to fast. Then after Ramadan, he will now pay back due to sickness. Or somebody who was on a journey. For example, somebody traveling from Abuja to Kano, from Abuja to Lagos, Abuja to Enugu, something like that nature. You know, as far as Islam is concerned, journey is not an easy thing. So somebody fasting was given excuse, so he can stop fasting on that very day, then he will now pay it after Ramadan. So these are the things concerning for those who were excused from fasting due to certain reasons. For women also were excused from fasting in the period of their monthly menstruation. During that period, they cannot fast, they cannot pray. They were excused from that. But after Ramadan, they will now count the number they miss and pay it back. But for the daily prayers, they were excused for that. God says they don't need to pay anything. They will be given the same reward as they pray, because God is the one who made them that way. So that is why he excuses them from that.
All right, so what is the significance of Zakat al-Fitr and who must give it?
Zakat al-Fitr is obligatory in accordance with the prophetic saying and practice. Prophet of Islam, Muhammad himself pay the Zakat al-Fitr. Zakat al-Fitr is obligatory on the head of the family. The head of the family will now pay for himself, for his wife, for his children and anybody that is under his care. He is the one to pay for them. And somebody who is alone, he can now pay for himself. These are the people who are to pay. And the Zakat al-Fitr, it is on even the new baby born. As long as he was born today and the Salah is tomorrow, then the parent will pay for him.
So, but what is exactly Zakat al-Fitr?
Zakat al-Fitr is like almsgiving, but this time around you are to give out some food items. That is what we call prophetic measure. You now use your hand like this, fill it up with either rice, corn, or whatever food that you are eating in your locality. Take it like this 4 times of your full hand. 4 times of your full hand is for one person. So you give out this for yourself and for other also the same amount of food items. In a situation where you are not residing in your home, for example, you travel to another country where you don't have this kind of practices, for example, then you can pay. Then you monetize it and pay. For example, in Abuja today, when I ask the people selling rice in the market, they measure it, it is around 1,800 naira per one person. So you can convert it to money to that amount and pay. That is the Zakat al-Fitr.
Sorry, just before, when exactly is the right time to actually give out?
The right time for paying Zakat al-Fitr is 2 days to Salah. 2 days, 1 day, then on Salah day before going to the Eid ground. That is the right time for paying the Zakat. The essence is for you to give out that food to the needy person who doesn't have anything in his house. At least on Salah day he now have something to cook for his family.
Okay, Imam, there's this question that has been bothering a lot of people, maybe those of us who are not very informed. We see that usually the fasting starts by sunrise to sunset. But we know in other climes, in some countries, in fact, the sun doesn't set until about 9, 10 in the night. Are they supposed to endure? Some Nigerians travel to those places maybe for studies or meetings, and you show up in a place and by 9 o'clock the sun is still shining. What is the significance of that? Are you supposed to endure until sunset, which is just like 4 hours before the sun rises
Let
again?
me even cite an examples in the countries of Europe. Most European countries, they have this kind of issues. Sometimes you can fast only 4 or 5 hours. It finish, and sometimes it changes.
Yeah.
You now fast for the period of 18 hours.
18 hours.
Yes, you have to do it. Those who are living there, they fast for that period, no problem.
So if you're a Nigerian who fasts for less, and by providence or some national assignment you show up there, it becomes your lot immediately.
Exactly, you have to fast in accordance to that time. Yes.
Right, so Imam, let's talk about this. Now, a lot of people are asking questions if it's right for people to pay for millions of naira, for Umrah during the Ramadan when people around them are hungry. What do you have to say about that?
You see, Islam is very clear on what to do with your own money. The money is yours. You are at liberty to spend what you have in accordance to what you need or what you wishes. Going for Umrah in Ramadan is special. Assisting the needy also is special. The two are sacred. The two are rewardable. So it depends. Some people have a lot of money. They can render assistance to others, and at the same time, they can go for Umrah and come back. You see, Umrah benefit the entire humanity. When you go to Kaaba, offer special prayer for yourself, for your family, for your neighbors. At the same time, you now pray for the entire country. God give you assurance that he will answer that prayer. So, if you have the opportunity to do so, I can even say in flight, you assisted the entire citizens of the country because you pray for the whole country. So God accepts the prayers. In one thing or the other, you may not know, but that prayer will affect the life of every Nigerian. So in this aspect, you can see, even for you to go for Umrah, you assisted the entire citizens of this country. This is one part. In another part, if you converted the money that you are used to go for Umrah, you now convert it to give assistance to the rest privileges in the country. That one also is there, and the reward is going to be more for you. So the two are accepted as far as Islam is concerned.
Okay, Imam, there is this other question that seems to generate debate every time it comes up. The question is sitting on two tripods. One of them is on sponsorship of people to Umrah. I would like to know what reward comes with that. But the second leg of the question is the one that is a bit controversial. It's where we see state governments also sponsoring people to Umrah. Is it a practice that is right? Should we take public funds to execute this? Or, like you rightly mentioned, is it because of the prayers that are offered for the nation that makes it justifiable? I would like your thoughts on that.
Let me start with the first questions. Sponsoring somebody for Umrah. Let me add for Umrah or Hajj. Yeah. It is allowed for people to sponsor others to go for this religious obligatory. Though Islam is very clear. Hajj and Umrah are compulsory upon somebody who can afford. If you don't have the means, then it is not obligatory on you. So if somebody wanted to sponsor you, there are certain conditions that has to be fulfilled. One, for you to sponsor somebody to go for Hajj or Umrah, you must provide for him what he will leave for his family throughout the period that he will now be in absentia. So if that exercise will take him at least 1 month, then you have to make provision for at least 40 days so that he will now go and come back and get his family healthy. That is the condition. Not just you now go and pay for the ticket and the hotel accommodation there and leave him alone. No. If you do that to me, I will accept. But from there, I will not go there. I will now go and convert the money to buy food to my family. Because if you give me, it has become mine. In Islam, when somebody gives you anything, that thing he gives you becomes your own. And you have the right to spend it the way you want it. That is Islam. So yes, it's allowed for somebody to sponsor others, but let him do it well, so that he will not introduce somebody to another problem. No, that is one. Number two is the issue of, can you repeat it?
Having government
using government fund. You see, in Nigeria, we have two religions. We have Islam and we have Christianity. The federal government establishes two commissions, Hajj Commission and Christians Pilgrimage Commission. By saying so, we understand that government make it official to run these two commissions, the Hajj Commission and the Christian Pilgrimage Commission. Let me say something here. We have a football club owned by the nation, like Super Eagles. Other sports, when Super Eagles or Nigerian basketball or Nigerian whatever game, Olympic Games, for example, or all African Games, for example, you see federal government spending the public fund to sponsor Nigerians who will now go and compete in that games. Why? Because they carry the name of Nigeria into that. The same way and manner, Muslims who are going for Mecca or Christians who are going to Jerusalem, they also carry the name of what? Nigeria to that area. Even though that area is religious, is sacred, but it is Nigerians who are going out. If more than 100 of Nigerians going out to do something, Nigerian government has to be there to protect the interests of these hundreds of Nigerians. Because wherever Nigerians are, they fall under the responsibility of Nigerian government. This is one. Number two, as far as I knew, it is not going to be easy for the state government or federal government to just pay money for somebody going for either Hajj or Umrah or Jerusalem, just like that. No. Those whom you are seeing, most of them are going to serve the pilgrims that went there. So, for example, when the Christians are going to Jerusalem, definitely federal government has to send some delegations, some officials who are going to take care of them there. The same way and manner, when Muslims are traveling for Mecca to perform pilgrimage, definitely they will be assigned some officials who now look after them. And at the same time, one thing that people doesn't understand, pilgrims who are paying their money to go for this exercise, if you look at that money they pay almost all the services. They pay all, in fact, with some commission that will go to the side of government. So government use most of them to do this kind of services.
Just a quick follow-up. You talked about if somebody needs to sponsor someone, then he also has to provide for what that person would give his family for the period he's away. For individuals who are saving to go, is it also obligatory on them to provide for their families while they are away? And for those who get state sponsorship, is the state supposed to also provide for their family while they are away?
For example, as I mentioned, concerning the state sponsorship, it's not sponsorship, it's for those who are going to work.
Okay.
So if you are going to work, definitely the system provides provide for you some allowances. Okay. Of course, you can use that allowance to share between yourself and your family. So that one is taken care of from there. But for somebody who, let me say, somebody starts saving, he has intention of going for Hajj, so he started saving. The law says you cannot go for Hajj until when you are assured of what you have, it will be okay for you and your family at home. If not, then you cannot go. So that is why Allah says, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. God make it compulsory upon people to go for the pilgrimage, but for those who can afford it. Under this word, affordability, scholars made mention that affordability means you yourself, you have to cater for yourself, all what you need that will take you to and fro. And you have to make provision for your family at home. And the road you are going or you are following, it has to be free. It has to be safe. So all these conditions has to be fulfilled before you even start the journey for Hajj.
Okay. Now, Imam, actually, I think I have two questions before we wrap up. Now, the first one is, in the month of Ramadan, how important is self-introspection for a Muslim? And also, the final one is, now that Ramadan is actually winding up, what's next for the Muslim?
Let me start for the last one. When Ramadan ends, Muslims were expected to fast 6 days after Ramadan. We call it Sittu Shawwal, 6 days of Shawwal, to fast additional 6 days. So all in all, you have 30 or 29 days, and you have additional 6. If you multiply it in accordance with the reward given on each fasting, you have the reward of the whole year. That's what the prophetic saying says about it. Secondly, for somebody to fast for a day, the reward will give him chance to go far, far, far away from the hellfire. At least the distance between him and the hellfire will be a journey of 70 years. Journey of 70 years. Looking at this from here where we are, if you head east, you can reach China. You continue up to Japan, and you continue from Japan, you continue up to United States of America and come back here within that 70 years. You can do so. Yeah, of course, that will not take you more than 20 years to do that, even if you are working on your foot. Which means if you fast 30 days or 29th days plus this, it means the whole hellfire will not be close at you, no matter what, because you now have thousands of years distance. Of course, so you are safe. That's the meaning. So it is very, very important for somebody to do that. And after Ramadan, after that, we have some fastings again. After that Sittu Shawwal, we have 9 days in the month of Dhul Hijjah, that is the month of Hajj. After it, we have the fasting of 9 and 10th of the first month of an Islamic calendar. We call it Al-Muharram. That is Ashura and Tasu'a. After that, we have the fast of 3 days in every month. After that, we have the fasting of every Monday and Thursday. So somebody may choose what he can do. At the end of it, in every month, if you cannot do the 3 days, or you cannot do the Monday and Thursday, you can fast at least 1 day in every month. All these are after Ramadan. Of course, the lessons learned from Ramadan period, it has to be continued even after Ramadan. That is kindness, doing good to the neighbor, assisting others, being patient, perseverance, making sacrifices for others. All this has to continue. That is peaceful coexistence as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Imam. We have been speaking with the Imam of the Abuja National Mosque, Dr. Mohammed Kabir, who has provided us very useful insight about the Ramadan and what is expected of the Muslim Ummah before and after the Ramadan, and indeed all year round. And of course, he talks to us about what virtues we should carry out, we should continue with after this holy month of Ramadan. I want to thank you very much for making it to the studio and sharing with our audience all this useful information. And we hope hopefully after the Ramadan, we will find time to sit again and discuss other issues as it will affect and improve godliness as a people in Nigeria. Thank you once again for coming.
Thank you very much.
And I hope we have been able to bring you very useful information today. We thank you for, as always, allowing us free access into your living room. We will do this again tomorrow. I am Sunday Michael Ogu.
And I'm Dashan Husseina Usman. Have a wonderful day.